Hey, thanks for staying with us. This is The World on Bernama TV. Every year on the 24th of January, we observe the International Day of Education. This year's UNESCO theme, The Power of Youth in Co-Creating Education, challenges us to rethink the classroom and empower students as active partners in their own learning. To discuss how we can build more inclusive and holistic systems, we're joined by Reverend ELISHA, who has pioneered holistic learning models that have transformed the lives of over 7,000 children, including refugees and marginalized youth from across the region. His work in crisis-affected education has even earned prestigious international recognition from the US and the Middle East. Reverend, thanks for doing this. We're glad to have you today. Now, UNESCO's theme this year is the power of youth in co-creating education. From your decades of experience, how can we shift the traditional classroom model to one where students are active partners in designing their own learning journeys? Reverend?
First, just a bit of correction. It's more than 10,000 kids we've worked with, actually. I think that the shift is very simple but profound. We must stop treating students as just recipients of education. Now, that's deeper than what we can think of. And start treating them as what we would call contributors. I think that makes a lot of people nervous. So global research shows one thing, that when students have a voice, they have a choice. Now, the responsibility to also be part and co-creators, the learning is deeper. Research proves this. Now, you are familiar with UNESCO and, of course, OECD. Both highlight one thing very clearly. The whole student agency, letting young people help shape projects, it becomes a real-world problem-solving engagement. And even now then, learning now is assessed in a whole different way. Now, the challenge is this. For vulnerable children, it restores dignity. It does something to them. They just don't consume education. They help build it. So one thing we do at Dignity is this. We're not preparing students for exams. We're preparing them for life. Because if it's just exams, we cause them to fail. And we do it by treating them not as projects, but as partners. That's very critical.
Now, there is a growing global conversation about moving beyond purely academic results. Why is it more critical than ever in 2026 to integrate the hand and heart practical skills and character building alongside traditional mind education?
Yeah, so we call it the hand, head, and hearts, the mind. But it's so important because academic knowledge alone can no longer hold a generation together. The world is facing actually a learning crisis. We hear that all the time. A mental health crisis, and we have what we call a skill transition all at once, happening at one time. So the evidence is this. World Bank reports, get this, 70% of children in poor countries cannot read properly by the age of 10. Now that makes almost 1 billion people, And the WHO says 1 in every 7 adolescents struggles with mental health. That's very worrisome. So the synthesis is this. Education today must train the mind with knowledge, but the hands with skills, and the heart with character and resilience. Why? Again, it's the dignity engagement for us. The mind gives knowledge. We need that. The hand gives competence, but the heart brings the stability and character, because without which knowledge becomes fragile. And you know what? Skills become dangerous. We need the shaping and the formation of the heart, the character. We have a crisis with character. Look at across the grid, across the globe. Whether they are world leaders, whatever they may be, there's a character crisis.
Now, education is often cited as the ultimate equalizer. However, for underprivileged communities, access alone isn't always enough. Now, what are the key elements a learning system must have to truly help a child break a generational cycle of poverty? In this conversation we're having, we're talking about the lack of character also.
Yeah. I would say, Gerard, access is a doorway. We need access, but learning is the delivery. If a child sits in school for years and cannot read confidently, cannot regulate emotions, cannot build skills, and cannot see a pathway to dignified work, let me put it this way: poverty simply gets a new uniform. We just dress it up differently and we think it's going to go away. So I would say I will ask us to consider three essentials on this one. First, we need strong literacy and numeracy. Early childhood is very critical. It cannot just be money making. It cannot be just a certain segment for a certain segment of society. We must engage across the board. The second would be this: safe, well-supported teachers. That is so critical. We keep talking about syllabus, but one thing we keep forgetting is the person who delivers it, the person who's going to be shaping the child for 4 to 6 hours a day, practically 3/4 of the week and of their life. So that's so critical. And third, the real pathway to skills, work, and dignity. If I will add this, nutrition plays a very important part. Health supports plays a very important part because, a hungry brain doesn't learn. An old African proverb says this, isn't it? An empty stomach has no ears. So we actually have a learning poverty, and it's a global problem. It's a global emergency. Systems must treat reading as a life-saving intervention. So again, I bring back the dignity part is that education must connect learning to life. Otherwise, we cannot change the future. We engage again the mind, the hand, the heart. We must see people of credible character. We can be brilliant, Gerard, but we can be so destructive to other people's lives.
Now, you've often advocated for schools to be sanctuaries in today's fast-paced world. Now, how can educators ensure that learning environments remain safe spaces that prioritize a child's mental and also their emotional well-being?
Yeah, we have an hour for this question, right? This is so critical, and I'm, of course, and through your experience, we're only going to just hit the surface here. In our fast-moving society, look at what's happening with AI. A school cannot just be a classroom. I emphasize this again. And that's something we make. Trina, my wife, who works with the rest of the team and drives the whole process, over and over emphasizes this. The school cannot just be a classroom. It must be a safe place to belong, to develop, to explore, to grow, to find confidence. Now, again, I quote UNICEF and OECD. Their research shows this one thing: when students feel safe, free from bullying, and that's an issue, and they have support emotionally, learning outcomes improve significantly. This develops them in a very different way. Now, let me add one thing here. This means that trauma-aware teaching, strong relationships, clear boundaries, especially with this digital distraction. Gerard, I go back to one thing here. Our teachers must be equipped, must be trained, must be developed. If not, the delivery is truncated.
And I'd like to add here, as we celebrate International Day of Education, what is one mindset shift you believe every Malaysian and the global community needs to adopt and to ensure no child is left behind in the future of education? We've got about a minute and a half left.
Okay. Well, we must stop measuring education only by access and exams and start measuring whether the child is actually learning. and in a safe space, able to be building a dignified future. If we say it takes a village to educate children, that village must have counselors, it must have mental health workers, it must have all these different people, because we cannot see it from a narrow lens, and hence we always have a broken system. So the future of education is not only getting a child into school, but it's assuring every child can read, learn, belong, heal, and rise up. So schooling without a holistic learning presence is no longer acceptable, especially for the poor. We must see it in a broader sense. We must see it clearer. We must be able to develop across if we want really to see the future secure for these young people, and especially the poor.
Thank you very much, Reverend ELISHA SATVINDER, with his thoughts on the International Day of Education being celebrated today the world over. Thank you very much, Reverend. Well, it's time for us to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you more updates from around the world right here on Bernama World, Bernama TV. Stay with us. I'm GERARD.